Thanks so much for listening. Before getting into today's episode, I just wanted to let you know that I would love to add value to you, your organization, and those you serve through speaking, training, professional development, or coaching. I've been fortunate to work with those in higher education, pre-K-12, and more recently, the corporate space. To learn more, visit my website at cjleadership.com or send me an email at chris@cjleadership.com. I can't wait to hear from you, and now on to our episode. Welcome back, friends, to the Department Chair Leadership Podcast. As always, I'm just so thankful that you take time out of your busy schedule to invest in your own professional development, which also helps those you lead. Today, I'm really excited for our guest, Dr. Brandi Kelly. She brings over 20 years of heart, hustle, and hands-on experience to the world of education. A licensed clinical social worker and Maxwell certified coach, she's worn many hats, from school social worker to principal to superintendent. Along the way, she's been honored with the Distinguished Elementary School Principal Award and Middle School Principal of the Year Award. Dr. Kelly is proud to be part of inspiring networks like the Illinois Association of School Administrators, Teach Better Network, Illinois Principals Association, and the Educational League of Illinois. She loves sparking change through speaking, writing, and hosting her own podcast. Please check it out. It's called the Lead with Hope podcast, where she shares real conversations about leadership, resilience, and growth. Dr. Kelly, so excited for us to connect this way. Welcome to the podcast. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me on the show. I really appreciate this.
Well, I appreciate it too. We certainly have a few mutual acquaintances, and we've been able to have some Zoom meetings, and certainly through social media. I've been a fan and following the great work that Brandi is doing, and she can tell us more. But I know she recently transitioned from K-12 leadership into working with coaching, writing, all those great things full time. And so let's just start right there, Brandi. Why don't you give our listeners a little background about who you are, maybe some of the influences you've had, and what has brought you to this point today, especially with your most recent writing and coaching?
That's a big question, Chris, but let's start with the fact that, yes, I left after 24 years in education. The last 13 years, I was a principal and a superintendent, and I loved every year that I spent in education. Starting out as a school social worker, I was working with kids, providing counseling and support services, working with them and helping to help them, get resources for disabilities, whether it be a 504 plan or an IEP. And then, of course, leading buildings. That was amazing work. I led 3 different school districts over my 10-year time as a school leader. And then my last educational position was as a superintendent. And through a lot of self-reflection in writing my just released book, Lead with Hope, it released on May 5th. Through writing that book, I talk about the fact that as leaders, we are consistently growing. As human beings, we are consistently growing and becoming the best version of ourselves. And that happens through an intentional practice of self-reflection to build self-awareness. And as I was unpacking the core pillars of the Hope system and applying them to my life, I was realizing that the higher I climbed in education, the more disconnected I felt from my purpose. And my purpose is essentially just serving and helping people. And you can certainly do that in any role in education. But as a superintendent, I found myself talking more about building projects and things that were more disconnected from the relationships. And that's where I believe the magic happens. It's the people, not the programs. It's the people, not the buildings, that make education great. And my heart's desire is just to give back to education by serving the people through writing and speaking and coaching. And so that's what I'm going to do now with Spark Hope EDU.
Well, and thank you for doing that. As somebody who is in education, as a lot of listeners know, my day job, so to speak, is I chair teacher ed, and so getting great teachers into the field is one of our goals. And thank you, kudos to you for having the courage to step into that work, because from my perspective, not only those that are in the field need that for hopefully job satisfaction and retention, but I could see a great connection to encouraging people to get into the profession for those reasons. I know HOPE is an acronym.
Yeah.
And Lead with Hope is a book. Again, I'll put in the link to that. You definitely want to get a copy if you have a team, whatever that is, for a book study, your leadership team, get them a copy. So why don't you tell us, Brandi, a little bit about your acronym for HOPE, what led to that, and share just a little something about the book.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I've got to take you back to when I was a teenager to give you the full picture of why I wrote this book. When I was 15, it was a rainy Saturday afternoon in May, and I had two little brothers. I was the oldest of three siblings, and my brothers went on a horseback ride, and only one brother came home after that horseback ride. Um, that Saturday, I was getting ready for prom. My parents sent me on to prom and they went off to look for my brother Brandon. My little brother Dustin, he was the baby. He ran home from the creek that day and he said, Brandon fell in the creek. And we really didn't think it was as significant as it turned out to be because that creek, we knew it as a trickling body of water. We did not know it as the flooded body of water that it had become after several days of rain. But to make a long story short, Chris, he went into that creek on his horse on that Saturday afternoon. Sunday was Mother's Day, and divers pulled him out. It was over a mile from where he went in on Monday afternoon. And the tragedy doesn't end there, thankfully. There was a lot of goodness that came from that tragedy. When I learned of what was happening, it was prom night, like I said, and somebody made a comment at prom, and I went to the bridge. Our community members showed up for our family, and they were searching on both sides of the creek when I got there. When Brandon's funeral was planned, the his classmates, seventh graders, they boarded a bus during a school day and they came to his funeral. They created a memory book that really captured his mischievous heart, his mischievous spirit, and his golden heart because he was that kid. He was the class clown, but he was a kid that everybody loved, and they had beautiful stories that I still have today. It was because of that spark of hope in that dark time in our family that I decided to give back and to go into education. And as a school social worker and a principal, I was really able to do just that. At one point, it came full circle. I have a good friend. We went to high school together, and she lost two of her children during my time as a principal at Ramsey Grade School. The second child that she lost, I was the principal of her two youngest children. And I remember getting them a book and talking to them about the grieving process and just trying to share with them a little of my heart and a little of my hope so that, in a time when they couldn't hold hope for themselves, I could hold it for them. And I wanted them to know that I was there for them and other people like me were there for them. And so really it just came full circle during my time at Ramsey. But I didn't stop there. I mean, I believe that God has a greater plan for our lives, and we have to be obedient with that. Faith is one of my main core values. And so, I tried to do that in my career, and it led me then to a position as a primary school principal. And I had a little under 400 kids that were under the age of 7. I could always count on a hug every single day, but I couldn't tell you, Chris, what was going to be on those hands, whether they be sticky fingers, snotty noses, or other bodily fluids that we won't talk about on the show. But needless to say, it was a wonderful time, but I also knew that I was not, that was not the best fit for me. I loved middle school kids. And so when I got an opportunity to lead a middle school, I did just that. And I transitioned during COVID. It was May of 2020 that I transitioned to a middle school. And it was hard. It was a hard time, but it was during that time that I found the Teach Better Network. And that has led me to blogging for them with the 4-part series, and then eventually writing my book, Lead with Hope, Building a System of Self-Efficacy with Road to Awesome Publishing. And that's how you and I met.
Well, Brandi, what a truly impactful story. I appreciate you not only sharing that, but the extent to which you have truly, it's probably safe to say, dedicated your work to providing some type of triumph from what was clearly a tragedy. And I truly agree too. There's a greater purpose for our life, and I think we're here to serve and not be served.
Right.
And when we started, you said that you focused on the purpose of your life, and you were doing great things. I mean, you're multiple, two-time principal of the year, superintendent, and and so what is it when you talk about your purpose, and we can get into more other questions too about your phenomenal leadership background, but those that are listening, I think it's very significant that you had the courage to step into your true purpose, because without a doubt, you were very successful as a teacher, as a leader, and so maybe talk a little bit more about when you mentioned you're stepping into your purpose and how you feel that now, and you've already been doing this, so the extent to which that you've been fulfilling that purpose, and how you've been working with others, perhaps in ways that previously, when you had the demands of a full-time administrative job, that you weren't able to do.
Yeah, Chris, I started Spark Hope EDU in December of 2024. And even before that, I was doing a little bit of speaking and coaching. So I've been doing this work on the side as a school administrator for about 2 years. But, as I think I shared with you a little bit before the show started, the higher I climbed in education, the more disconnected I felt from my purpose. And, I was talking to somebody the other day about leadership and about the idea that sometimes we have to go all the way back to our childhoods and think about, what did you do in play? What gave you the most joy in play? Because that's really what fuels your passion. And I remember as a child, I played school, I played waitress. I did a lot of different things that was all about serving people. It was about helping them to become who they are meant to be. And that happens through service, through just having a heart for helping other people. And as I said before, the higher I climbed in education, there were so many different demands that required my time. And as a type 3 Enneagram, as a high achiever, as a hard charger, as somebody who is very, very type A, I missed sight of my true purpose, which was serving the people. And so stepping away from that for a time is what was needed. And then stepping into this business of Spark Hope EDU, where I can do that full time. I'm not going to have to juggle the demands of building projects or programs that don't build and grow people. So I'm super excited about the work that I am doing through speaking and coaching. Right now, I'm doing a virtual book study, and it's so much fun to interact with people who have read the book, who have questions about the book. It's amazing to me how many people out there that really do struggle with that idea of imposter syndrome that I talk about in my book. And There are a lot of people that just need that connection. They feel isolated in leadership, and we need to build a community. And so that's what I'm doing. I'm building a community of hope.
So if you could,
Mhm.
what does it's an acronym, I know. What does
Sure.
HOPE stand for?
Yeah. Hope stands for habits. Those habits are mind, body, and spirit. We have to consider the whole person. And that comes from my social work background. I am a big proponent of looking at the whole person and operating from a strengths-based perspective. And then we look at optimistic outlook. That's O. And that's just the mindset. I believe in a growth mindset. Sometimes we get into that fixed mindset that really limits what we can do and who we can become. So we have to operate with a growth mindset. And then P is purpose, passion, and perseverance. And while all three of those letters and constructs are important, when you put that all together, that's grit. And when you think of somebody in your life or in your leadership that was truly gritty, they were connected with their purpose, they fulfilled that purpose with passion, and they persevered through those hard times. If you can think of that person, you're going to think of a person who has a whole lot of grit. And then finally, it's excellence. E is excellence. And that's just getting 1% better every day. It's just a consistent process of becoming the best version of who you are and who you're meant to be.
Completely agree with all of these. I obviously couldn't have said it better or put it together better myself. So I'm glad that you captured it and that you're doing this work. Because on each level, Brandy, I think habits are so important. As you know from your time as an administrator, strategic plans are great. They're necessary, but I've often said, unless you can tell me what daily habits I'm going to change consistently to align with that plan, it's probably just something on a piece of paper. Obviously, I love the optimistic outlook. And you said the excellence, get 1% better a day. I couldn't agree more, especially with our classroom teachers, some of the hardest working people out there. Just do one thing a day or even one big idea school years. You tried 181 times and by next August you're 181 times better at whatever one thing you wanted to do. And so I thank you for sharing that. Again, yet another reason that our listeners need to get the book. And if you are in the leadership space in K-12, Brandy has a leadership lab that she conducts. She's doing book studies. So you've obviously had some great influences in your life.
Mhm.
I like to ask my guests then, what were some of your influences in terms of leadership? And along those lines, how do you define leadership?
Yeah. I don't think you can separate life and leadership. It all runs together. And one of the most impactful people in my life was, of course, my mom. My mom was diagnosed with cancer when she was 44. And just watching the way that she handled that diagnosis and her mindset shift when that happened had a huge impact on me. I think back to just the way she interacted with the people in her life. She was always a person who rooted for the underdog. Anybody that was the underdog, that's who she was going to try to help and try to promote. And so that really has influenced, I think, me going into education, me becoming a school social worker, working with people who are a little bit disenfranchised and maybe don't have the same opportunity as everybody else. But then you fast forward and you think about the leaders in my life. When I was at Effingham as a school social worker, I had a school administrator who I remember back in those days, people would call like a code purple. When she would come into the building, it would be a code purple because she was a district administrator. Again, she was a high, she had high standards. She was a high achiever. She did not let you rest on your laurels. She pushed you to be the best version of you. And she was the first person who encouraged me to go into administration. And I will always thank her for that now at that time, because again, core values drive everything I believe in life and leadership, and mine are faith, family, community, and service. And at that time, my children were at an age that I didn't think it was the right time to go into leadership. So I waited a bit, and my first administrative role was at Ramsey Grade School. But that still made an impact on me because she fostered my sense of self-efficacy. She showed me that she believed in me, and I think that's what the definition of leadership is. Leadership is simply showing that you believe in another human being's potential and capacity and speaking that into existence. We are so much better together, and if we can support and lift each other up, we're going to see our greatness grow.
I'm so glad you mentioned that, Brandy, because the term that I hear is we've all had somebody tap us on the shoulder.
Mhm.
And that doesn't necessarily mean that it was to go into a titled role,
Right.
but it was a mentor that said, you can do this. I see more in you than you see.
Yep.
And I appreciate you sharing those influences.
Mhm.
For those that are listening, I would encourage you, in addition to reflecting upon those that have influenced you, who might you need to tap on the shoulder, so to speak, and speak into their life a little bit. Give them some encouragement. Doesn't mean they need to change jobs, but maybe they could take on some type of an additional responsibility, or more importantly, just enhance what they're doing because you see something in them that they don't. So you did mention, switching gears just a little bit here with leadership, that you took on a principal role during COVID,
Yeah.
which for obvious reasons was not the easiest of times for anyone.
Mhm.
And so I like to ask leaders, what did you learn maybe about yourself or leadership? Certainly that's a form of crisis.
Yeah.
Any lessons that you learned that are enduring to both your practice and how you lead and how you mentor others, that you nonetheless did learn because you had to lead a rather large school in a time of crisis?
Mhm. Yeah, that's a great question, Chris. And I'm glad you asked that because that experience, it showed up as a theme that I see in my life and my leadership. As I shared, my brother Brandon drowned when I was 15. My mom died young. She was 44. I was 24 when she passed away. And during that time, I changed jobs. We had the quarantining, we had the COVID testing, we had the mask debates. It was a difficult time at school, but to add to that complexity of leading a new school during COVID, my dad had Parkinson's and he was diagnosed with dementia, started eloping from their family home in Vandalia, which was about an hour from where I lived. And so for a time, he stayed with me and he was having some hallucinations during that time, not sleeping at night. So by day, I was dealing with the craziness of COVID, and by night, I was caring for my elderly father. And the way that has shown up in themes in my life and my leadership is that I have developed fortitude. I have become a resilient leader. So I am well equipped to help people to build that resilience in their leadership. And I believe that right now it is harder to lead than ever before. And I'm not talking about a title. I'm talking about just managing all of the demands, whether you're a classroom teacher or a principal or a superintendent or a college professor or a CEO of an organization. It doesn't matter. We have to have fortitude and resilience. And because of these difficult times in my life, I have developed them through necessity. And I do believe that this system of hope, this system of self-efficacy that I have built is one tool in our toolbox that we can utilize to build that resilience and to help us to become better leaders for ourselves and our families and for those we serve.
Well, without a doubt, I mean, I'm just in awe as well, of the resiliency that you've shown. I think a lot of people would have perhaps maybe chosen a different path or a different way to respond to that. And while I certainly don't think that we're given tragedy as a way to learn something, we can choose how we respond. And for our listeners, if you're a formalized leader in K-12 and you're needing a boost, you're needing a coach, you recognize that you are in some type of a spot that requires resiliency. And as Brandy said, yeah, it's harder than ever right now. Heck, I think it's harder to lead ourselves than it than it ever was. And so it's just a great blessing that Brandy has come along and she's decided to lean into her purpose and passion to do this full time, because I know it's going to help and be in line with her core values of family, faith, family, community, and service. So could you talk a little bit more then, Brandy? What type of a person, leader, professional are you best suited to help, and how can you help them, and what would they need to do to connect with you?
You know, I like to work with leaders who are introspective. I like to work with those leaders who value the habit of self-reflection, because I believe that that is a necessity in helping us to grow and to become the best version of ourselves. And am preparing right now to release my first official Spark Hope Leadership Lab. It's a coaching cohort, a 6-week coaching cohort that helps us to really lean into that idea of self-reflection, building self-awareness to build self-efficacy. And through the weeks, we talk about habit formation. I share with them a habit tracker. And then in week 2, we move on to our thought life and how that affects our habits and our mindset. Sometimes we need to implement some tools, and this is pulling from my social work background, but ideas from cognitive behavioral therapy, cognitive reframing, and just talking about the brain science behind optimism. I think sometimes understanding that a little bit more clearly helps us to maybe be a little bit more motivated to put those habits into practice. And then in week 3, we talk about purpose-driven leadership and aligning our actions to our purpose. I talk a lot about self-care, setting boundaries, goal setting, and then finally just bringing all that together and synthesizing that system of hope that culminates in a professional and personal development plan.
I assume if they go to your website, they will be able to easily find contact information. That sounds like something that either individuals could do or even a leadership team or a group of teachers. And I would assume you probably don't necessarily have to be in the K-12 space to benefit from this. Is that correct?
No, and actually I'm working with a lady right now and she has started implementing some of these ideas. And one of the first habits she's put into practice is mindfulness. And just that simple, intentional habit that she has put into practice every single day, paired with setting an intention, has really paid dividends for her. And that was just a starting point after about a week.
Well, so much great stuff here. As we close out here, what are some other things that are on the horizon for you and for your company? I think I may have read there's perhaps another book in the works.
Yeah.
Just some things that you would like to share that you're working on, is also a preview of coming attractions for those people that want to be a part of it.
Yeah, so I haven't published this, so this is brand new here, Chris. I've got 2 books in the process. Like I said, I'm a type A personality, and I try to slow down, but boy, it's really tough. It's tough for me to sit still. But I've got a children's book in the work. When my grandson, my second grandson, was born, I just felt like I needed to share all the joy that that brought to my life. And so I wrote a book called Spreading Kindness with Sunshine, and Spreading Sunshine with Kindness. I'm sorry, I got that backwards. Spreading Sunshine with Kindness. And it's about Jensen and Rhett's adventures with kindness. And it just different stories about things that they have done to share kindness. I believe wholeheartedly that we can always choose to be kind, and going back to that basic core necessity of belonging, of connection, that you can't do anything else, you can't think of anything else. Kindness is always a strategy, whether it's in life or leadership. And I think we have to start young with our kids and sharing with them the importance of being kind, first to themselves and then to others. And then my second book that I just signed with a Christian publishing company is a devotion, and it's called When Life Speaks. So it's going to be a devotional journey, 30-day devotional journey about the hope and the abundance from that sense of spiritual hope that we get from the Bible. So I've got 2 books in the works, working on, releasing this leadership lab coaching cohort, and planning on attending some conferences and speaking. And I'm excited about sharing the hope that I feel in my life these days with the world, and helping to spread hope.
Folks, if you're looking for someone for speaking engagement, for training, whether you're in the educational space or the corporate space, you're not going to be disappointed with the great stuff that Brandi has going on. And I hope the time that we have spent has added value to you as a listener, and certainly those that you serve. Dr. Brandi Kelly, I really appreciate you being on today. Any final thoughts or comments as we close out?
The only thing I'll add at the end here, Chris, is each and every day, just remember that this life is short. So make sure you love yourself, you love your family, and live a life that you don't want to escape from. Because I think so many people are, they just, they're hoping for something, the next thing, the next thing, the next thing, and they're living a life that they don't love. We only get one shot. So cultivate a life that you love and live it today.
Perfect advice. Dr. Brandi Kelly, thank you so much for giving your time and expertise to the Department Chair Leadership Podcast. And to our listeners and viewers, thank you. Take care, and we will see you next time.